what's up? Sanisa Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. News broke earlier this week that Jake Paul and Most Valuable Promotions are set to promote women's boxing prospect from right here in the US of A, Deja Green, ahead of what is to be her upcoming fight with former unified champion Cederroos.
It's going down next week on the undercard of Serrano versus Cruz.
Their latest signing was revealed earlier this week. Women's boxing prospect Deja Green, the 33-year-old, is coming off of a stoppage victory over Suarez in October. The bout was on the undercard of Paul's outing against Anderson Silva. The undefeated prospect is currently slated to challenge for the WBC Silver Super Middleweight title next month against Cederroos at Madison Square Garden in New York.
If Deja Green wins that fight, she's one step closer to challenging the winner of Franchon Cruz versus Hannah Gabriels, the rumored fight between them.
That's for the undisputed Super Middleweight Championship. If that fight comes off, whoever the winner is, whether it's Franchon or Hannah, Deja Green will be in line
to fight them.
Interestingly enough, Deja Green's next outing will come on the undercard of Amanda Serrano versus Erica Cruz Hernandez. Serrano, aka The Real Deal, is known for her friendship with Paul and was the first signing to Most Valuable Promotions.
Now they've got two female fighters now.
This could end up being Deja Green's coming out party. She's facing the very statuesque and experienced Cederroos, who's coming right off that points decision loss, that lopsided loss to Franchon Cruz in their fight, which took place last year on the undercard of Taylor versus Serrano. It's unfortunate that Aline hasn't gotten the chance to fight in a rebound fight, takeover fight, to get back in the winner's bracket, though she does present a challenge.
The greatest challenge to Deja's blossoming career so far.
Cederroos hasn't fought in as many fights as Deja Green, but she has fought more experienced fighters than Deja has, than she has so far. You have to remember, Cederroos in 2019, she won a points decision over Femke Hermans, former champion Femke Hermans, the same Femke Hermans that just gave Mary Spencer her first professional loss in one-sided fashion. She also shared the ring with Alicia Napoleon, then champion Alicia Napoleon, in 2020.
She beat her on points too, in Alicia's neck of the woods, in Alicia's home turf.
She'll be sharing the ring with unbeaten Deja Green next weekend. Deja, who sports a professional record of 11 wins, no losses, no draws, 10 knockouts. Hefty knockout percentage.
So Cederroos' 8 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 4 knockouts.
That's right. Cederroos, the former champion, she doesn't have as many professional bouts as Deja Green, but she has faced better fighters than Deja Green has fought so far. So in that way, she's actually the more experienced fighter of the two.
In some way she is, yeah.
She's fought better fighters than Deja has, and she is the former champion, the former unified champion.
As stated, it's just unfortunate that Cederroos didn't get to rebound off that loss to Franchon in April of last year. There was certainly enough time left in the year for her to have a takeover fight, keep busy fight to get her back in the winner's bracket. It's unfortunate that didn't happen.
Deja Green, comparatively, was more busy in 2022 than Aline was. Aline only fought once, just once, whereas Deja Green, she saw action 3 times.
Once in 2021, 3 times in 2022.
6 of her last 6 fights have ended by way of knockout.
Last one ended in the 5th round with Suarez retiring in her corner.
Needless to say that Deja Green is a meaty puncher, and the former champion Cederroos, she is going to have her work cut out for her.
She is solid. Even though she lost a lopsided decision to Franchon Cruz, she didn't get knocked down and she didn't get knocked out.
Could Deja Green be the first woman to stop the former champion? Could she be the first to stop Cederroos? We'll find out next weekend, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. Men's welterweight news, an image that's been making the rounds per Goldenboy's social media account with a caption that reads, "Big things are brewing." In the image featured here, you'll see Oscar De La Hoya, the Goldenboy himself, Bernard Hopkins, the alien, the executioner, and Bud Crawford, the network and promotional free agent, who's free to go wherever he wants to go to do whatever he needs to do.
That is what he's doing. He's not going to leave his own career in limbo waiting for Errol Spence Jr. to spin the block.
I don't think he's going to. He's set to take on Keith Thurman all the way out there in May, towards the tail end of it, 5 months into this year. What's Terrence supposed to do? Sit on his hands and wait? welterweight.
So many conversations in reference to that failed set of negotiations.
So many conversations and so many strong opinions as to whether or not the PBC were even negotiating in good faith with Terence Crawford. In truth, I don't think they were.
I've maintained my original opinion throughout. I don't think they were negotiating in good faith. I think they offered him a deal structure that they expected him to reject, so that when he rejects it, they'll wrap this whole thing around his neck and blame him for the fight not happening.
That's what I think. I think they offered him a deal they didn't expect him to accept.
What's any of this got to do with Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, and Goldenboy Promotions?
Well, for Terence Crawford, the show must go on. He can't leave his own career in limbo wondering if Errol Spence Jr. will in fact spin the block. There's a very good chance that he won't. And if he doesn't, Terence Crawford's got to line up the next fight.
Oscar De La Hoya stated by way of his own social media, the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet, Terence Crawford, stopped by Goldenboy headquarters this morning. My partner, B-Hop the Alien, and I are making big moves.
Bernard Hopkins himself, by way of his own social media, stated, "It's good to see the best fighter by far in his division. Now, let's go make history, Terence Crawford."
I don't think this visit, this tryst, was about a single fight, a singular engagement between Terence Crawford and the good people over there at Goldenboy Promotions. I don't think that's what this is all about. I think this is about building
the next super fight in the men's welterweight division, laying the foundations for what could be the blockbuster fight between Terence Crawford and Virgil Ortiz.
Not straight away, you understand.
There's much that must come to pass before Terence Crawford versus Virgil Ortiz as a fight is ready.
There are some other things that have got to happen first.
The nature of the visit may have had something to do with Goldenboy Promotions' own Alexis Rocha being ranked at number 3 behind Keith Thurman and ranked behind Virgil Ortiz. Virgil, he's actually ranked at number 1, but we all know Virgil's supposed to be facing Haymon in his very next fight for what is Haymon secondary WBA title. If Virgil wins that fight, the way I think he's going to win that fight, he won't be in the WBO's ranks anymore.
He won't be number 1, and he won't be the next man in line to face Terence Crawford because he'll be in possession of that WBA secondary title.
The next man in line behind Virgil Ortiz is the PBC's own Keith Thurman, but we all know that Keith Thurman is set to face Errol Spence Jr., and if he loses to Errol Spence Jr., he'll lose ground in those rank standings as well. Ranked behind Keith is Goldenboy Promotions' own Alexis Rocha.
I'm sure that his name came up as a potential opponent for Terence Crawford.
But I'm also sure that the conversation between Terence, Oscar, and Bernard was not limited to a potential Rocha fight. There's also a potential Blair Cobbs fight that may have been discussed.
And of course, a potential Virgil Ortiz showdown that may have been discussed. Just the other day, Oscar De La Hoya was tweeting about that.
Oscar De La Hoya and Terence Crawford have a common enemy.
Al Haymon.
Al Haymon's PBC poses just as many issues for Virgil Ortiz as they have posed for Terence Crawford. Let's be honest. Neither one of those two fighters are going to get Errol Spence Jr. in the ring.
They're not.
And moving up the junior middleweight in pursuit of an Errol Spence Jr. fight would prove a fruitless endeavor for either Terence Crawford or Virgil Ortiz, because Al Haymon has a stronghold at 154 pounds the same way he's had a stronghold at 147.
It's the same shit. It's the exact same situation.
If either Terence Crawford or Virgil Ortiz were to move up to junior middleweight in pursuit of a Errol Spence Jr. fight, what they would find is that it's the exact same situation at junior middleweight that it has been at welterweight.
It's the exact same thing. They're just going to freeze you out up there.
There's really no point in either Terence Crawford continuing to pursue a fight with Errol Spence Jr. or Virgil Ortiz for that matter. Virgil's not getting Errol in the ring anytime soon, if at all.
If ever.
There's no point in pursuing him. Now, if Virgil Ortiz beats Haymon and becomes the WBA's secondary champion at welterweight, he will be in line to either face Errol Spence Jr., which we just talked about, or be elevated to full champion status once Errol officially vacates all those alphabet titles.
And I think he's going to. I've said it more than once. I don't think Errol Spence Jr. is coming back to welterweight.
So if Errol Spence Jr. isn't coming back to welterweight, and there's no point in following him up to junior middleweight, what do?
What?
I'll tell you what you do. You start laying the foundations for the welterweight division's next super fight. The fight between Terence Crawford and Virgil Ortiz, which could end up being for 2 of the 4 major titles at 147 pounds. That's what you do.
That's the play.
This is an opportunity for both Terence Crawford and Goldenboy Promotions. This is an opportunity for Goldenboy to continue to deliver content to their broadcast partner, DAZN.
This gives them the ability to stage a super fight of their own.
Involving a fighter that's widely regarded as a pound-for-pound talent, one of the best fighters, pound for pound, in the sport, in the world.
And their own bright young up-and-comer that they're already invested in, Virgil Ortiz.
Since Canelo Alvarez left Goldenboy Promotions, they've struggled to put on big fights under the Goldenboy Promotions banner. It's been difficult.
It's been hard to put on big shows. It's been hard to put on big fights. The biggest name under their banner, Ryan Garcia, he's going over to Showtime for that Gervonta Davis fight.
With some ingenue, with some doing, alongside Terence Crawford, they can build their own super fight that doesn't involve Al Haymon, any of his fighters, any of his welterweights, and there's absolutely nothing that he can do about it.
Crawford versus Ortiz has box office appeal. Crawford versus Ortiz has pay-per-view written all over it. This fight would enable Goldenboy Promotions to deliver their broadcast partner a big fight of their own.
That's what's in it for Goldenboy. What's in it for Terence is he gets to box on a platform that's worthy of him, that can finance him the kind of guarantees that he's used to.
Or at least something in that neighborhood.
The usual suspects, the boo birds, are going to criticize Terence Crawford for whatever he does, for how many lumps of sugar he pours in his coffee. There's no winning with them.
So there's no sense trying to.
That Spence versus Crawford fight, that fight's as good as dead.
Those idiots argue amongst themselves.
There's really no sense in wasting any more time on them. The first order of business now is delivering the next big super fight to the welterweight division. The one that Al Haymon failed to deliver, even though he had the run of the place.
It was all on him to deliver it. There was no Bob Arum, no Top Rank, nobody else, and he still failed.
Fucking idiot.
There's a golden opportunity here for Goldenboy Promotions. There's a golden opportunity here for Terence Crawford.
This doesn't have to be a 1-fight engagement. This could be a 3-fight deal, a 3-fight plan that caps off with a big showdown between Terence Crawford and Virgil Ortiz.
So we got this fight with Ryan and Gervonta. What is it going to take in order for us to get the other super fight that people want to see, Terence and Errol?
You know it's going to bring the other super fights that's waiting on a limbo to see if they want to take their own careers and their own decisions in their hand and make the fights like Tank is doing. It's really managing the traffic that's going to start the trigger in other fighters. Bud Crawford, them guys going to start it. That fight didn't happen with him and Spence. Yo, what they're going to do, when they see the door open, them young fighters, they're going to sit back and say, "Hold." They're going to say, no, wait, they need us, don't go nowhere. That was good 3 or 4, 5 years ago when they was getting 12-round money for 4-rounders. Al Haymon can't pay them that no more. That been stopped. And they all scattering now. Shoot, whop, they all coming. Hey, can you let me in? And you got to remember, every time you still fight, if that contract is still live by the date it expired, you got to get that man 25% of your money. They starting to realize now, I got to give Al my money. Yes, he's not a promoter. He's an advisor. He got around the Muhammad Ali Act that I stood up for. Google it, and you'll see Bernard Hopkins talked at this in the hearings. So now y'all got Duke because he's under the advisor, which the Ali Act doesn't cover. But now you over here with Aram, you over here with us, you over here with that. And they're like, oh, everybody's working together. No. The well dried up. You got this big house. You got all these cars. That's when stuff was good. You getting overpaid. You got maintenance, and you got bills, and you got taxes at the wrong time. And then COVID hit. That exposed a lot of frauds. If your money ain't right, then it's funny.
That is Bernard Hopkins detailing a situation we often talk about here on this channel and how the well may very well be drying up over there on PBC Island.
Widespread rumors and speculation that the PBC may be on its last legs, only being held afloat by the Showtime platform, their longtime broadcast partner, it being that their deal with Fox seems to have come to an end.
How there are so many Haymonites that will readily go up to bat for Al Haymon and his PBC without asking themselves, if everything really is on the up and up, then why didn't Fox renew the deal?
If the metrics were what Fox wanted them to be, if the numbers were the way that Fox wanted them to stack up, why wouldn't they have renewed their broadcast deal with the PBC? It's a common sense argument at its base.
But a lot of those guys ain't got no common sense. Bernard Hopkins, he does.
He knows.
Familiar faces and familiar fighters like Adrian Broner constantly griping about not getting all of his money from Al Haymon until he ultimately ended up leaving the island. More recently, Deontay Wilder griping that he's not being paid on time. He doesn't want to have to wait for money that he already earned.
What do you think he was talking about? You think he was talking about somebody else?
There's a feeling that Al Haymon may be robbing Peter in order to pay Paul, that the reason these guys don't get their money in a timely fashion.
He pays these guys in increments. That's the rumor.
So is he borrowing money owed to one fighter and using that to pay another over time?
And that's why nobody's getting their full purses on time.
Because he's borrowing money from fighter A in order to pay fighter B. Borrowing money from fighter B in order to pay fighter C.
It's just a theory.
Hard to imagine that they turned over a profit from box office fights like Ruiz versus Areola, or Ortiz versus Martin, Ortiz versus Ruiz, Thurman versus Barrios.
It's hard to imagine that they made any money from those fights, especially when Marcos Villegas in so many words said that Fox wasn't footing the bill for production costs.
And ideally, that's what the network broadcast partner is supposed to do. They're supposed to give the promotional outfit a budget. Outfit pays for fights from that budget. But according to Marcos, that wasn't the situation, and the production costs were coming directly out of the PBC's own pocket.
That sounds expensive.
Al Haymon likely blew through all that Waddle and Reed money that helped get the PBC off the ground upon its inception, and that's assuming that he didn't steal it.
Siphon it off to some offshore account somewhere, a nest egg for when he finally decides to walk away from boxing. That's a possibility as well.
But in a nutshell, it does seem to be the way Bernard says it is. The well does seem to have dried up. Fox is out of the picture, and all you've got is Showtime. And all Showtime's doing is billing box office fights.
Pay-per-views in the hope that the money to pay for those fights comes from me and you, and not them.
Those fights aren't part of the regular Showtime schedule.
That proliferation of pay-per-views in that sequence, month to month, every month, a box office fight.
Hoping that the fans will, in essence, subsidize the operational costs in order to put these fights together, because Showtime themselves, they're not spending as much money on their boxing programming as they used to. And the money to pay for these fights to happen, well, has to come from somewhere.
They're hoping that it comes from me and you.
Well, other fighters and their careers are left in limbo. Very sparse schedules of activity.
Because perhaps they can't afford for them to be more active.
Bernard Hopkins touched on a lot of familiar subjects that we've talked about here on this channel, and I can't help but think that he's definitely onto something, because he would know.
You gonna tell him he don't know shit about boxing?